Revealed, Sinister Witchcraft returns 7 haunted tales of the unexplained and cursed. Lisa rubbed her eyes, the darkness outside swirling like a living thing. She was just trying to survive working night shifts while raising Emily and Ben on her own in their small, barely standing rental. Every evening held a predictable rhythm: dinner, homework, bedtime stories, until one cool autumn night when everything fell apart. Shadows danced amongst the trees, the wind howled like an angry spirit. Then, movement caught her eye. Nothing substantial, just a flicker, but it chilled her to the bone. "Mom, there's a witch in the woods," Emily insisted the next evening, her voice anxious but firm. Lisa dismissed her fear as mere childhood imagination, clutching her keys tightly as she left for her shift. But doubt gnawed at her as whispers filled the house each night. They crept under the door, slithered through the walls, filling the dark corners with something sinister. One day, she crossed paths with Mrs. Collins, the eerie old neighbor. Wrinkles carved into her face told stories older than time. "Stay away from the woods," she rasped, her eyes wide with terror, glancing over her shoulder as if the very trees were listening. Lisa rolled her eyes, too exhausted to hear ghost stories. But deep down, a sliver of apprehension formed. The police were no help, chalking her worries up to lack of sleep. "You're just stressed, ma'am," one officer said with a bored shrug. Lisa felt invisible, like they didn't care that something lurked beyond the treeline, something hungry. Days turned into weeks. Emily's new obsession with an antique doll, "It's watching us, Mom," turned the house into a hell of paranoia. The doll seemed to shift places when no one was watching, its glassy eyes gleaming with malice. Neighbors, once friendly, now held whispered meetings beneath flickering streetlights, their silhouettes twisting into dark shapes in Lisa's mind. A storm brewed one night, the air heavy with electricity. With dread tightening its grip around her chest, Lisa made a decision. She had to confront whatever was stalking them. Armed with nothing but her determination, she stepped into the woods, the rain pouring down like a chorus of terrified cries. The trees loomed above, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. The deeper she walked, the heavier the silence pressed down. Suddenly, a whisper brushed past her ear. It could have been the wind or not. "Help," it seemed to cry, and Lisa shivered. Her heart raced. She knew she had to keep going, to shield her children from whatever evil lurked. Just as she reached a clearing, the air stilled, and Lisa felt a sense of impending doom. "Emily, Ben," she called, feeling the dread suffocating her as their small figures followed behind. They didn't belong here. Before she could turn, the earth trembled beneath them. A memory buried deep in her family's past tugged at her, and the realization hit like a lightning bolt. The whispers. The witch. It was tied to her bloodline. "Mom, look!" Ben cried, pointing toward a shadowy figure emerging from the darkness. It moved like smoke, formless yet undeniably alive, swirling towards them. The night thickened, wrapping tightly around their throats as Lisa's heart sank. Could the curse be true? Had they stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension? "Run!" she shouted, fear igniting within. But as shadows converged and the figure advanced, she realized the true test lay before them. Could they escape a fate that had followed their lineage for generations, or were they destined to succumb to the darkness? Lisa's heart pounded as they turned to flee, urgency driving them through the thickening darkness. The shadow behind them surged, twisting and flickering like a candle's flame in a storm. She could hear it closing in, a whispering voice echoing in the night. "Come back. Faster," Lisa urged, grabbing Ben's hand and pulling Emily close. The children's small feet stumbled over roots and stones, but fear lent them speed. An urge to protect intertwined with desperation as the figure darted just out of sight, haunting their every turn. Each gasp of breath burned in Lisa's chest, but she pressed on, willing her legs to move, to reach the safety of their home where familiarity should shield them. Yet, as they plunged deeper into the woods, the trees grew thicker, their gnarled branches enmeshing like skeletal fingers blocking their escape. "What is it?" Emily cried, glancing back, her fear palpable. "I don't know. Just keep moving," Lisa shouted, biting back the dread that threatened to choke her. In that moment, she felt the weight of her choices closing in, a suffocating embrace. Hadn't she always told her children to face their fears? Now, faced with a horror beyond explanation, she felt like a fraud. With a sudden jolt, Ben tripped, tumbling to the ground. "Mom!" he yelled, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Get up! We have to go!" Lisa screamed, frantically waiting for him to gather himself. The eerie laughter echoed through the trees, spiking her anxiety. Just then, Emily halted, her wide eyes locking onto something above. "Mom! Look!" she whispered, pointing towards the branches. A figure hung there, suspended, its face twisted into a grotesque grin. Fingers elongated and claw-like, and every part of it felt wrong, unnatural. It seemed almost human but draped in shadows. "No! No! Run!" Lisa yelled, panic driving her forward. They had to move, they had to get away. But the dark shape in the trees didn't fade. It began to fall, floating closer to the ground as if gravity had forgotten its laws. Lisa's resolve shattered, replaced by a desperate flight. She spun around, her instincts screaming for them to escape as the laughter morphed into an unsettling chant. "You're one of us now." The earth shuddered beneath their feet, roots writhing like snakes, and a frigid breeze swept through, mocking, teasing. It hadn't been mere imagination. The children felt it too, the weight of something profound pulling at their very essence, threatening to siphon their souls. Finally, they stumbled into a clearing, a faint glimmer of moonlight breaking through the branches. Lisa couldn't tell how long they had been running. She turned in motion to her children. "Stay close." She looked around, desperately searching for their pursuer. But silence enveloped them. The oppressive feeling dissipated, leaving only the pounding of her heart and the distant rustle of leaves. "Where did it go?" Ben whimpered, his small body trembling against his sister. "I don't know," Lisa gasped, desperation creeping into her voice. "But we can't stay here." As she scanned the darkness, something flickered in the corner of her vision. A lantern? It danced with an eerie glow, beckoning just beyond the line of trees. "Do you see that?" Lisa whispered, glancing at her kids. They nodded, fear lining their faces. The light seemed so inviting, yet she felt an instinctive dread. Could it lead to safety, or was it a trap to lure them deeper into the witch's embrace? It was an impossible choice. With the shadow of fate looming behind them, they faced the flickering light that drew them in. What lay ahead? Hope or doom? "Let us go," Lisa urged, steeling herself as she stepped toward the glow. But as they moved, the whispers returned, swirling around them in a haunting chorus. "You're never alone, you're never alone." What awaited them in that unsettling light felt heavier than any darkness. Would they dare to find out? As they stepped cautiously toward the flickering light, Lisa's heart raced with both fear and trepidation. The air seemed to thicken, each breath tasting like metal as shadows danced in the corners of her vision. "Stay close," she whispered again, glancing sidelong at her children, their eyes wide and trembling. The light pulsed, illuminating the nearby trees in an otherworldly glow. It felt both welcoming and sinister, like a siren song enticing them deeper into the forest's haunted grip. Lisa could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, hungry for their fear. Mom Ben's voice was barely above a whisper. "What if it's a trick?" "I don't know," she admitted, forcing back doubt. "But we can't outrun it forever. Maybe, just maybe, that light means help." The words felt hollow even as she spoke them, slipping from her mouth like grains of sand. As they pushed forward, the glow grew brighter, revealing a path strewn with leaves that looked almost alive, shifting and curling underfoot. Lisa's stomach twisted at the sight. Was it just the moonlight, or did she see slight movements, like the leaves were breathing with a life of their own? "Mom, it feels weird here," Emily said, her voice trembling as she gripped Ben's hand tighter. "It's okay, we're almost there," Lisa urged, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The air was thick with a sweet scent, like autumn leaves but laced with rot. It filled Lisa with dread, and the whispers wrapped around her again, milder but insistent. "Come closer, come to us." Their pace quickened, the light now almost blinding. As they reached the source, it was not a lantern at all, but something far more unsettling, a circle of stones arranged meticulously in a perfect ring. In the center, a small fire flickered, casting unsettling shadows that darted along the ground like the claws of the creature they had fled. "What is this place?" Ben breathed, looking around wide-eyed. "I don't know," Lisa whispered back, but the suffocating sense of dread made her want to turn and run. "I don't like it." Emily murmured, peering into the depths of the circle. The air shifted, a cold wind sweeping through them, as if the woods were exhaling the weight of secrets long kept without warning. Faint silhouettes flickered from the surrounding trees. Shadows that solidified into figures, disjointed shapes with elongated limbs and faces shrouded in darkness watched with eyes gleaming like embers. It dawned upon Lisa, these were the figures she'd seen swaying above, the ones that had haunted her every thought during their flight. "Mom, what is happening?" Ben whimpered. "I don't know," she pleaded, inching back. "We need to leave now." But it was too late. The figures began to chant, their voices mixing with the rustle of leaves, growing louder, merging into a sickening symphony of voices. "You're part of us now, you're part of our circle." Fear clawed at her gut as the shapes moved closer, gliding over the ground like wraiths, drawn to the children with an insatiable yearning. Lisa felt an oppressive force pushing down on her, a sense of doom creeping into every fiber of her being. In desperation, she grabbed her children's hands tightly. "Fight it! We have to get back!" Suddenly, the fire erupted into a plume of emerald flames, illuminating the faces of the creatures, a meld of horror and rage. Lisa felt the heat against her skin, a reminder of danger pressing relentlessly around them. "Help us!" Emily cried, pulling away slightly as terror gripped her small body, but Lisa held on, unwilling to let go. "No! Stay with me!" The chanting swelled, drowning out the sound of her thoughts. The ground began to tremble, shaking beneath their feet. "You cannot leave, you are ours." In that moment, just when all hope seemed lost, a loud crack broke the air, the trees behind them splintering. Shadows from the forest surged forward, as if another entity sought to claim them. Lisa's heart sank. What was coming? Was it salvation or damnation? "Run!" she screamed. The darkness surged nearer, a monstrous wave intent on swallowing them whole. They had only seconds to escape. Would they find safety in the woods, or would it lead them further into the jaws of despair? With the shadows of fate behind them, Lisa, Ben, and Emily dashed into the deepening dark, not knowing which way to turn, or what awaited them ahead. Branches whipped against Lisa's face as they tore through the forest. The shrieks of the figures echoed in her ears, growing louder, ever hungry. Each step was a battle against a force that clawed at her ankles, pulling her back into the darkness. "Mom, I can't breathe," Ben gasped, struggling to keep pace. "Just a little further," Lisa shouted, desperation lacing her voice. The ground seemed to twist underfoot, an unseen horror writhing just below the surface. She could feel it chilling her bones, wrapping around her heart like a snake tightening its grip. Ahead, a shadow loomed, an ominous gap in the trees that felt almost like the mouth of a cave. A new source of dread clawed at her gut. "This way!" she yelled, veering toward it. The trees shuddered around her, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. They plunged into the opening, and the moment they crossed the threshold, a sudden stillness enveloped them. Lisa stopped, panting, the darkness pressing against her from all sides. Behind them, the whispers faded for the briefest of moments. "Are they gone?" Emily whimpered. "I don't know," Lisa said, her heart thundering. "We need to be quiet, they might still be out there." The silence felt heavier than the night itself. Lisa turned to her children, their faces lit by faint, ghostly moonlight filtering through the cracks overhead. Their eyes shimmered with fear, and for a second, all she could hear was their ragged breaths echoing in the tight space. But then, as if summoned, the whispering returned, softer, more intimate. "We are waiting, you are one of us." "They're here," Ben squeaked, shivering. "Shoo!" Lisa scolded, her voice a harsh whisper. They pressed deeper into the shadows, moving quietly along the narrow space. The earth beneath felt wet, as if it had been drenched in rain, though the air was stagnant and thick. As they edged forward, they stumbled upon a small altar, an ancient stone slab covered in moss and dirt, surrounded by wildflowers that suddenly seemed out of place. They twisted, alive and virulent, although the air held a fetid stench. "What is this?" Emily said, horrified. Lisa felt drawn to the altar, an insidious pull that made her skin crawl. I don't know." She leaned closer, catching a glimpse of symbols carved into the stone. The markings seemed to shift and writhe under her gaze, almost alive. "It's like it's breathing." A sound like rustling leaves echoed in the darkness, making them freeze. Lisa looked up, heart pounding. A shadow moved at the entrance, blocking their only way out. "Don't move," she whispered, gripping her children's shoulders. But it was too late. The figures glided into the narrow chamber, their faces still obscured by the night. They hovered just out of the light, their eyes glowing like molten glass, reflecting the dim light from the altar. "You have come to complete the circle," came their chilling chorus, each voice distinct yet merging into one. "Run!" Lisa shouted, turning on her heel, but out of nowhere, the air became electric, a heavy weight pressing down on her. She felt tendrils of darkness snaking around her legs, roots of despair pulling her back toward the altar. "Mom," Emily cried, ripping her gaze from the figures and reaching for her mother, her small hands trembling. "No!" Lisa screamed, eyes wild with terror. "We fight. We're not theirs." She yanked at the shackles of shadow, her heart in her throat, but the figures closed in, the soft, pleading chant turning into a terrifying roar, drowning out everything. "You can't escape. You belong to us." In that instant, a rattling crack echoed, merging with the figures' shrieks. A new darkness surged forward, the density of the shadows morphing into something blinding. And the altar began to glow with a sickly light, illuminating the runes across its surface. "What now?" Ben cried out. The ground vibrated with a deep thrum, threatening to shatter as the altar pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. The figures hesitated, a split second of uncertainty that seemed to freeze time. Then, in a panic, Lisa shouted, "Follow me." Together, they dove deeper into the shadows as the glow flickered, the figures lunging behind them. But the alcove opened up into a yawning chasm, darkness swallowing everything around them, and just as they stepped over the edge, Lisa's heart stuttered with dread. Was this the end? Or would they find a way out, or encounter something worse below? The question hung in the air as they fell, the ground rushing up to meet them. The darkness enveloped them, a suffocating blanket that seemed to stretch on forever. Time lost all meaning as gravity crushed down, propelling them into the abyss. Lisa flailed, trying to grip Ben and Emily as they spiraled through the void, their screams carried away into silence. But the fall felt endless, a slow descent that heightened her panic, then, a sudden jolt. They hit something solid, but the ground wasn't what she expected. It wasn't hard earth or jagged stone, it was cold, slimy, and alive. Lisa gasped, bile rising in her throat as they tumbled onto a surface that rippled like the skin of a monstrous creature. "Get up! We need to move!" she shouted, urgency bubbling over her terror. She could feel it now, the presence that had been lurking around them, hunger twisting in its essence. They scrambled to their feet, disoriented but alive. "Where are we?" Emily asked, wide-eyed, wiping the dampness from her face. The air felt thick, an oppressive weight that was almost tangible, like breathing through molasses. "I don't know," Lisa snapped, heart racing as she scanned their surroundings. The shadows were more pronounced here, stretching and darting in the flickering, ghostly light emanating from the altar now behind them. The glowing symbols pulsated in rhythm, casting grotesque shadows that danced around their feet like playful spirits, or hungry ghosts. "There!" Ben pointed, terror etched into his features. A tunnel yawned at the far end of the chamber, its walls slick and glistening. But it didn't just lead into darkness, it whispered, promising secrets and threats. "Should we go that way?" "No!" Lisa cried, instinct kicking in. The figures from before seemed to hover at the edges of her mind. "We can't," but as she spoke, a familiar chant slithered through the air, nudging its way into her consciousness. "You can't escape, you belong to us." Horrified, she turned just as a figure stepped into the glow, their features now visible. It was the woman from the forest, face gaunt and hollow, eyes gleaming with a sinister hunger. By her side, two more emerged, their movement graceful yet predatory, like wolves in the night. "Complete the circle," they murmured as if reciting a prayer. Lisa felt the pull again, a gnawing urge to listen, to obey. "Resist!" she hissed to her children, feeling them tremble under her hands. Without thinking, she bolted for the tunnel, dragging her children behind her, dread spiking through her veins. The figures pursued, their chanting rising in a cacophony that blended with the thrum of the pulsating altar. The walls seemed to shimmer with their presence, pulsing like a heartbeat. Don't look back! Lisa shouted, adrenaline pushing her forward. They hurtled through the tunnel, damp walls closing in on them. A swirling mist enveloped them, thick enough to choke. She felt Ben's grip tighten on her arm. Emily struggled to keep pace, gasping for breath, but just as they reached the end, something heavy yanked at her ankles, roots of shadow creeping along the floor. They surged back, threatening to pull her down into the cold depths. She stumbled, crashing against the damp stone, hands clawing desperately to remain upright. Mom! I can't! Ben cried, struggling against the shadowy grasp. Hold on to me! She roared, her voice trembling with fear. With a surge of strength, she yanked him closer, shaking off the darkness as it writhed beneath her, desperate to claim what it believed was rightfully its just ahead. A faint light shimmered, a promise of escape or another trap. Lisa surged toward it, tearing through the thick mist that clawed and thrashed at her limbs. But as they approached the light, an echo ripped through the air, sharp and piercing, followed by the roar of laughter that sent shivers shooting down her spine. Together, my darlings, together you cannot flee from fate. The tunnel narrowed, but the light grew brighter, almost blinding. Instinctively, Lisa pushed forward, praying with every breath. What lay beyond might save them or usher in their doom. As they plunged headfirst into the light, heart-stopping. Moments blurred their senses, but one singular horror took root. The laughter persisted, echoing inside her mind, a reminder of what they were still facing. To her dismay, she had no time to process. The laughter shifted into whispered threats, swirling with the promise that the true horror was still waiting for them. The end was far from over. What awaited them on the other side? They burst through the blinding light, landing hard on what felt like intertwining roots, slick and pulsing. It was no tunnel anymore, but a living mass that coiled around them, a hungry beast ready to consume. Lisa's heart raced as she pushed up, instinctively shielding Ben and Emily with her body. She heard the thud of footsteps behind them, the figures from the chamber spilling into this new realm with their ghostly chant echoing around them. Run, she screamed, forcing herself upright and tugging her children to a nearby gap between the twisted roots. The shadows shifted like smoke, closing in with a hunger that made the air around them crackle. We can't keep doing this! Emily gasped, her eyes darting to the figures advancing through the bright haze. Just keep moving! Lisa replied, charging forward, adrenaline flooding her veins. The roots writhed beneath her, as if they had their own sentient will, trying to trip her up. The whispers grew louder, digging into her thoughts, planting seeds of doubt, despair, surrender. Suddenly, a flash of blinding white erupted ahead. Lisa skidded to a halt, frozen at the sight. In the clearing stood a statue, an ancient figure carved from stone, its face a contorted mask of rage and sorrow. Glowing runes spiraled around its base, illuminating the clearing with an ominous glow. Mom, look! Ben's voice broke through her haze, pointing. A stone tablet lay at the foot of the statue, covered in foreign symbols. What does it say? I don't know! She yelled, grappling with the urge to rush forward. Shadows lurked at the edges of her vision, the figures closing in, chanting louder, a distorted song that wrapped around her throat like a noose. Emily clutched her mother's arm, terror flooding her wide eyes. We can't let them get us. We need to shoo. Lisa lifted a finger to her lips, straining to listen as the shadows merged into one, an amorphous entity now swirling around the roots, hungry and spine-chilling. As Lisa glanced at the tablet, the symbols glowed brighter, illuminating the clearing. Suddenly, an image flickered in her mind, the woman from the forest. You're too late, she had whispered. They want you, they need you. With a rush of intuition, Lisa grasped that they were part of some dark ritual. They want us to join the circle, she managed, horror clawing at her throat. They need blood. We have to stop them. The shadows twitched, as if they could hear her thoughts, and surged forward, narrowing the gap between them. Their eyes glinted, reflecting a vile eagerness. Mom! Ben screamed, tugging at her wrist. What do we do? Find a way to disrupt the symbols. Lisa shouted, clenching her fists. We can break their hold. In a mad dash, she lunged for the statue, shaking with desperation. The shadows screamed. The entities twisted, their voices overlapping, intertwining like thunder. Return to us. You cannot resist. Lisa reached the tablet and ran her fingers over the carvings. What do you want? she yelled into the chaos. Suddenly, a jolt shot through her, blinding pain radiating from the center of her chest as if the shadows had reached inside for her soul. No! They're feeding off our fear. Don't be afraid. She yelled to her children, desperately fighting against the icy fingers wrapping around her heart. She twisted the tablet, desperate to unearth its secret, her breath hitching in her throat. A low rumble vibrated through the air as the shadows reacted, hissing in anger and fear. Lisa's pulse quickened. She needed to uncover the truth, fast. Beneath her hands, a passage opened, bright and beckoning. Mom! Come back! Emily shouted, her voice shrill with panic. Don't look back! Lisa cried, pulling Ben back as he reached for his sister. A blinding light engulfed her, pulling her in deeper. She had to hold on to them, had to escape this nightmare, but as they plunged into the abyss of light, Lisa felt the shadows reach out, their laughter echoing through the light, chilling her to the bone. You can never escape, you will always belong to the darkness. The truth was looming in dark, closer than she dared fathom. What awaited them on the other side could either seal their fates or lead them to salvation. Would they discover the key to breaking the curse, or would they become part of the haunting forever? Light enveloped them, bright and blinding, swallowing up the darkness that had chased them down. But the moment of respite shattered as they landed, tumbling onto cold stone, gritty against their skin. Lisa blinked furiously, trying to clear her vision. When it finally focused, it revealed a warped landscape, an endless plain, cracking and twisted, with screaming shadows dancing just out of sight. Where are we? Ben whispered, his voice frail, as if the very air might snatch it away. Lisa pulled her children closer, panic flooding her. I don't know, but we have to stay together. A chill crept through the air, wrapping around them like a fog. The landscape pulsed with muted whispers, and every breath felt heavier, swollen with dread. Emily trembled, and for a moment, Lisa felt the edges of her courage begin to fray. What if they find us again? Her daughter's eyes brimmed with tears, reflecting the dim shadows that lingered just beyond their vision. The ground quaked beneath them, sending ripples through the stone, and Lisa felt her heart race once more. She scanned the horizon, searching for something, anything that resembled safety. We have to keep moving, she urged, her voice strained but resolute. As they stumbled forward, the shadows from the clearing crept closer, their outlines sharpened and twisted. The chanting resumed, echoing in a discordant harmony that seemed to leap from shadow to shadow. You cannot run forever, you belong to us. Lisa's throat tightened. They were following that horrific melody, drawn to its source like moths to a flame. I can't, Emily whimpered. I can't do this anymore. Just keep your eyes on me. Lisa barked, fierce and determined. We need to find a way out. We have to fight them. But deep inside, doubt gnawed at her. How could they fight against something so ancient, so powerfully malevolent? Over there. Ben pointed wildly, excitement tinged with fear. In the distance, a flicker of light beckoned through the shadows, fragile like a candle in a storm. We can reach it. Without waiting for another word, Lisa surged toward it, pulling Ben and Emily with her. The earth trembled beneath them, shadows writhing, hissing like angry serpents. Faster! She screamed, adrenaline driving her onward. As they neared the light, Lisa felt a surge of hope that maybe this time, they could escape. Maybe this was the moment where they could break free from the nightmare. But she felt the shadows reaching, their invisible fingers brushing against the back of her neck, like a cold whisper promising to drag her back into despair. Mom! Look! Emily cried, halted in her tracks. The light flickered and expanded, revealing a figure cloaked and faceless, standing so still, it sent a jolt of fear through Lisa's chest. Turn back, the figure said, voice a kaleidoscope of echoes that sent shivers down her spine. You cannot unlearn what you have found. Somewhere deep within, Lisa felt betrayal seep through her. What do you mean? We'll never be part of this. She shouted, her voice trembling. As the cloaked figure took a step closer, the shadows recoiled, hissing in horror. The truth always demands a sacrifice, Mom. Ben cried out, his fear raw and biting. In that instant, Lisa saw it, an incomprehensible choice looming before her. Behind them, the shadows closed in like a storm. Before them, the flickering light offered a chilling promise. She turned back to her children, their eyes waiting for her answer. What choice would she make? The chilling whispers surged louder. The shadows tightened their grip around her, inviting despair. They were no longer just echoes, they were a part of her, a part of something far more sinister. As confusion swept over her, the cloaked figure's hands extended, beckoning. The ground shook violently, and everything began to spin. This time, there would be no escape, or would there? Lisa's grip tightened, heart racing as she faced the decision that could shatter their very existence. Would she risk it all for a revelation that might lead to salvation or doom? The ground trembled fiercely, almost as if it were breathing, and Lisa felt the weight of the shadows closing in on her. The air thickened, heavy with secrets that clawed at her sanity. She felt unmoored, a tiny boat tossed in a stormy sea, the light ahead flickering uncertainly. Mom! Ben's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, raw with panic. What do we do? Stay close. Lisa shouted, though her own fear echoed in her words. She turned back to the cloaked figure, the whispers fraying at her resolve. What do you want from us? The figure tilted its head, still shrouded in mystery. You seek an escape, yet unmasking the truth requires a price. Its voice dropped to an icy hush. One must willingly relinquish their past to embrace the unknown. Fear snaked through her veins. We won't give you anything. She yelled back defiantly, though her heart sank with terrible doubt. Behind her, the shadows surged forward, dark clouds feeding on her fear. Each whisper seemed to throb with a hypnotic pull. You belong to us, they chanted, wrapping their icy fingers around her heart. Emily clutched her mother's hand. Mom, I'm scared. Tears streamed down her pale cheeks, glistening under the dim light. Let us move. Lisa cried, yanking Ben and Emily forward, pushing through the thrumming dread in her chest. They had to reach that light. They had to escape, but the shadows were relentless, and as they stumbled toward the light, it flickered violently, like an old film struggling to stay in focus. It revealed bits of memory, fleeting images of laughter, warmth, all sunny days that felt like an eternity ago. The anguish she had buried deep surged inside her, suffocating. With every step, the ground beneath them felt more alive and responsive. It pulsed and cracked, threatening to split. Hold on! Lisa cried, tightening her grip on her children as she pulled them along. Suddenly, Emily went rigid. Mom! She gasped, jaw trembling. Look! Lisa turned just in time to see the shadows erupting from the ground, twisting into grotesque forms that reached for them, eyes like black pits filled with endless night. You will not escape, you will not forget. The cloaked figure stepped forward, a wave of dark energy emitting from its core. Join us. Embrace the truth. No! Lisa screamed, her voice wavering but powerful. The figure loomed larger, a monstrous silhouette against the backdrop of the flickering light. She felt herself being pulled in, like a moth drawn to a flame, but she felt her children's fear anchoring her. Mom! Ben's voice broke through her fog, grounding her once more in their shared reality. She turned to her children, their faces etched with terror. What would she sacrifice? In a moment of clarity, she locked eyes with the cloaked figure. You think you can have us? You think you can take us? We will never be yours. In that moment of defiance, the shutters of the shadowy world began to tremble, as if the very fabric around them had come undone. Not waiting for the shadows to react, Lisa stumbled backward, drawing Ben and Emily with her. Run! She shouted, urgency propelling her deeper into the maze of light. They dodged and weaved through the faint warmth that steadily faded around them, but the chants rose in pitch, the shadows clawing at them, a monstrous roar building behind. You cannot keep what was never yours. With every ounce of strength, she raced toward the light, hope warring with despair. They could not be lost here. Not yet. Behind her, the darkness churned, threatening to envelop her whole world. Just as they reached the heart of the glowing luminescence, Lisa felt the pulse of ancient power. It resonated within, promising salvation. Yet, it demanded a choice. Do it! Emily screamed, terror etched in her voice as shadows encircled their ankles, dragging them down. Time stretched around Lisa, an eternity crammed into mere seconds. Would she dive into the unknown, sacrifice her past, but save her children? Or deliver them back to the hunt of the shadows? Mom! Ben screamed again, and the shadows closed in tighter. She had to decide. The light flickered, threatening to extinguish, shadows clawing at her resolve. Lisa's heart raced fiercely. This is it, she breathed, facing the light, standing at the precipice. Would she step forward? And in that lightning moment, a deep, guttural roar exploded behind them, the darkness slithering to reclaim its prey. What awaited them beyond the light, and was it more terrifying than the shadows they were fleeing? The light expanded, swirling with blistering warmth, but the shadows lingered, dark tendrils snapping at Lisa's heels. She hesitated, breath hitching in her throat, caught between the haunting past and the unknown future looming before her. Mom, please. Emily's voice trembled, a desperate whisper, as the shadows lifted her slightly off the ground, yanking her little body back like a ragged doll. Ben's face was a mask of terror, and in a split second, Lisa felt the ground crack beneath them. The darkness festered, a void hungry for anything it could grasp. Let her go. Lisa roared, panic mixing with anger. She lunged forward, adrenaline surging through her, her heart pounding a frantic beat. She grasped Emily just in time, wrenching her back against her chest as the chilling fingers of night retreated, but only slightly. Mom! The light! Ben cried, his voice cracking. The light glimmered fiercely now, as if responding to her resolve. It beckoned them, offering a glimmer of hope, and yet, with each flicker, she felt a pull, an unseen force that threatened to unravel her yet again. Maybe it wants a trade, Lisa thought aloud, though her mind screamed against that possibility. The cloaked figure rippled in the shadows, its form undulating with malicious glee. Sacrifice one to save the rest, no. Emily protested, forcing a sob. I won't leave you. Lisa's stomach churned. We are not making that choice. She pulled her kids closer, bolstered by their teary looks. They were each other's strength. Stay with me. But the whispers grew louder, chaotic, swirling like an endless storm. You will pay the price, they echoed, dripping with malice. Dread seeped into her bones. With each word, she felt fissures forming in her heart, shadowy tendrils latching onto her resolve. I won't surrender. She hollered into the void, but her voice trembled. Mom! Ben shouted, his body rigid as he pointed to a new shape forming amidst the shadows. An image took form, their home, warm, filled with light and laughter. Lisa felt her heart lurch. Memories surged, evoking a bittersweet nostalgia. Was this the price they demanded? To live some other life? No! She screamed again, fear escalating. She turned back to the light, desperate to find a route of salvation. It dimmed almost imperceptibly, reflecting her own waning hope. Together, we go. Now! She commanded, plunging her hands into the searing glow. She pulled her children in tightly, a decisive move, praying they could slip into the light just as the shadows tightened their grip. The touch of the light was electric, almost unbearable, and for a moment, she felt suspended in time, the air surging with possibilities. The shadows roared behind them, a cacophony of rage and yearning. Then, with a violent jolt, they shifted, flickering moments of reality mixing with shards of despair. Lisa closed her eyes against the swirl of memories and shadows clawing at her senses. Colors flashed around her: blue skies, laughter, love, pain. It all invaded her mind like blinding stars exploding as she held on to Ben and Emily with all she had. We must survive this. And then she heard it. A voice deep and echoing, pooling into the chaos. Join us or be lost forever. A piercing light burst forth, illuminating their surroundings. She was holding her breath as everything collided. The shadows lunged, and the light surged, then silence. Lisa blinked. The shadows felt distant, a mere whisper now. What happened? Ben gasped, breathless. Emily's grip was tight around her arm, and for a second, she feared losing that safety. Around them, an eerie calm settled, shifting shades casting flickering shadows on the ground. It felt wrong, too quiet, as if something sinister was merely hiding, gathering strength for the next move. Are we safe? Emily asked, her voice trembling, tiny breaths like wisps of smoke, but Lisa couldn't answer. Something deep inside urged caution, a creeping sense of dread tightening its grip. She opened her mouth but found no words, her throat dry, chilling thoughts clouding her mind. The world felt altered, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Stay close," she whispered, scanning the unfamiliar landscape, worn stones underfoot, the whisper of darkened trees encircling them like a cage. Then, from not too far off, a sound reached her ears. A low, sinister chuckle echoed through the stillness, reverberating with malice. The shadows shifted again, intertwining with the light, a throb of danger, weaving and pulling them towards the unknown. Somewhere within that darkness, a new horror was awakening, and she dreadfully knew they were not alone. What had they unleashed? What awaited them in the creeping shadows? Lisa's heart raced as she picked up on a familiar rhythm, the malevolent laughter echoing around them, intertwining with the pulse of the ominous shadows. The silence felt electric, humming with tension. Lisa gripped Emily and Ben tighter, dread pooling in her stomach as it dawned on her they hadn't escaped at all. The shadows had shifted, morphing like living darkness to ensnare them once more. The laughter echoed again, but it was laced with something sinister, a taunt mocking their desperate flight. "You think you can defy fate?" the voice crooned, coiling around them. "Welcome back. You cannot run from what dwells within." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and a fissure opened, darkness spilling like a shadowy tide. "No! Stay here!" Lisa shouted, as she took a protective stance over Ben and Emily, the warmth of their bodies grounding her against the chilling fear that threatened to swallow, but every surface trembled as whispers of the past clawed at her mind. They were memories, sharp and jagged, flickering images of what once was. Laughter turned to screams, warmth to cold steel, all vibrating around them. If she didn't act fast, they would be lost to the shadows forever. With resolute strength, Lisa stepped forward, allowing her body to shield her children. A surge of courage rose within her. "You don't get to take us!" she shrieked into the void. "We choose our own fate." The laughter faltered, momentarily quieting. Shadows recoiled, their ominous forms fluid and confused. Emboldened, Lisa ventured deeper into the light still flickering at their sides, a beacon amidst the encroaching dark. Hope thrummed through her veins. "Follow me," she urged, racing ahead toward that flickering glow, her heart pounding as she pulled her children behind her. Every step she took felt like a triumph over the darkness, even as the whispers clawed at her resolve. "We're almost there." The light pulsed brighter, revealing an arch that shimmered above a tangled mass of roots. Just beyond lay a clearing, a glimmering realm of surreal hues bursting with color. A heartbeat of life danced within it, a promise of safety and warmth. "Mom, wait!" Emily cried, stumbling slightly. Lisa turned, scanning the shadows that loomed at the edge of their light. "There!" she shouted, pointing to the arch. "That's our way out." Time sped up, urgency tightening around them like a noose. As they bolted forward, the shadows hissed in rage. "You cannot escape. You belong to us." The monstrous voices crashed around them, a wave of despair. "No!" Lisa shouted back defiantly, barreling through the arch. They plunged into a radiant light suffused with warmth. It enveloped them, the light blazing against the tendrils of darkness still trying to clutch at their limbs. Through the shimmering barrier, reality bent, colors swirling like a liquid kaleidoscope. With one final push, they surged into the bright expanse, the binding shadows flaring, unable to follow, and then, with a roar like a tumbling avalanche, the arch simply vanished behind them, swallowed by a violent wave of darkness. A calm descended, and they landed in the soft grass, breathless. Around them, sunlight bathed the world in gold, and nature unfolded like an open hand. "Did we escape?" Ben whispered, wide-eyed. "I think we did," Lisa breathed, tears glistening as she held her children. They were safe. Miraculously safe. Relief flooded through her, warming the fear that had gripped her like icy chains, but perhaps it was too easy. A weight settled in her chest, and the laughter still echoed faintly in her ears. Shadows lingered at the edges of her thoughts, flickering memories of what had clutched at them. "We must stay vigilant," Lisa cautioned. "What we faced might not be truly gone." "Mom, can we talk about what happened?" Emily asked slowly, voice small. "Later," Lisa promised, knowing the truth of the darkness's lingering whisper. "We can do it together," Ben chimed in, nodding. A gust of wind rustled the leaves, and she knew in that moment they had forged a bond stronger than any darkness could break. "Together, we'll face whatever comes next," she said. "I promise." She took a deep breath, the scent of earth and pine filling her senses, pushing out the ghosts of the past. The glow of a new dawn warmed their faces as the sun broke through the clouds, engulfing them in radiant light. They had escaped, but they would always carry the shadows in their hearts, ready to face whatever lay ahead together. As they walked away from the haunted woods, Lisa felt something shift within her, a resolve stronger than ever. No matter how dark the shadows, the light and love of her family could push through. They were unbreakable. The world was vast, with countless tales still waiting to be uncovered, and they were ready to embrace them all. If you loved this story, it's time to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive tales. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button right now to help us feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section down below with your thoughts and theories about the ending. What do you think happened next for Lisa and her kids? We want to hear from you, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans like you understand the importance of supporting our channel, so let us spread the word.